Jake stood in the middle of the council chamber and felt like he might throw up. The room was cold, sterile, and full of alien eyes watching him. There were tall beings with long bodies and smooth blue skin. They did not blink. They did not move unless they had to. They looked at Jake like he was a broken machine that needed to be fixed or removed. He had been chosen to represent Earth at this first meeting with the... It was supposed to be an honor. It was supposed to go well. Jake was a good diplomat. He had studied their culture. He knew their rules. He understood that they did not like jokes or casual talk. They wanted facts, numbers, and clear agreements. Jake could do that. The new translator hanging around his neck was the latest technology from Earth. It was supposed to be smart. It was supposed to take his thoughts and turn them into perfect diplomatic language. The scientists who gave it to him said it could read his mind and filter out anything that was not appropriate for the meeting. Jake had thought that was cool. Now he was not so sure. The first few hours of the meeting went fine. Jake and Commander Lyra discussed trade routes and technology sharing. Lyra was the head of the delegation. She had bright eyes and a calm voice. She asked good questions and listened to Jake's answers without interrupting. Jake started to feel more comfortable. Then something happened that made Jake's brain stop working. Lyra bent forward to look at some papers on the table. When she did, Jake saw her body in a way he had not seen it before. They had evolved differently than humans. Their spines curved in a way that made their rear end stick out quite a lot. Lyra had a very noticeable rear end. It was round and full and shaped in a way that made Jake's eyes lock onto it. Jake did not want to notice this. He tried to look away. He tried to think about the trade agreement they were discussing. He tried to focus on the other in the room, but his brain would not cooperate. His brain, which had been trained by millions of years of human evolution, kept sending signals to Jake about Lyra's body. The signals were loud and clear. Wow, that posterior is something else, Jake thought to himself. He meant it as a private thought, just his brain talking to itself, nothing more. He was not going to say it out loud. He was just tired and his brain was being dumb. This happened sometimes. Jake knew how to control himself. He would just think about it for a second and then move on. But the translator had other ideas. The device around Jake's neck started to buzz. The buzz became a hum. Then the hum became a voice that spoke in, a language that sounded like wind moving through metal pipes. The translator took Jake's private thought and broadcast it into the council chamber at full volume. It made sure every single heard every single word. Wow, that posterior is something else. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Jake had ever heard. Everyone in the room stopped moving. Commander Lyra stopped looking at the papers. She straightened up and turned to look at Jake. The other turned to look at Jake too. Even the guards at the doors turned to look at Jake. Jake felt his face burn red. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. What could he say? What was he supposed to say? He had just told the most important alien diplomat humanity had ever met that he thought her butt was great. This was bad. This was really bad. Jake tried to calculate how bad this was. This could mean war. This could mean that humanity would be locked out of space forever. This could mean that Earth would lose access to the technology they had. This could mean everything he had worked for was ruined because his stupid brain had noticed a stupid body shape. Jake opened his mouth again. "I am so sorry," he said. "That was a malfunction. That was not something I should have said. I apologize to you and to the council." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Her blue face did not show any feeling. Her eyes did not blink. Jake waited for her to tell him to leave. He waited for her to walk out of the chamber. He waited for her to tell him that the meeting was over. Instead, Lyra tilted her head to one side. "Explain," she said. It was not a request. It was a command. "Explain what?" Jake asked. "You said that my body shape was something of value," Lyra said. "You said it was something else, which in your language means it was unusual or impressive. Why did your translator broadcast a thought about my body to this council?" Jake swallowed hard. He looked at his hands. Then he looked back at Lyra. The other were still staring at him. The guards were still staring at him. Everyone was waiting to hear what he would say. "On Earth," Jake started to explain, "humans have involuntary thoughts about bodies. It is something we cannot really control. It is part of how our brains work. When I see something, my brain makes observations about it. Sometimes those observations are about body shapes. I was not trying to insult you. I was just having a thought that I should have kept private." "Involuntary thoughts," Lyra repeated. "Thoughts you cannot control." "Yes," Jake said. It is a biological thing, my brain does it automatically. I did not mean to offend you. Lyra was quiet. Then she turned to the other and spoke to them in their language. Jake could not understand what she was saying. They listened and did not move. Finally, Lyra turned back to Jake. "We will continue this meeting," she said. "But afterward, you will explain to me more about these involuntary thoughts. I want to understand why your species has this problem." Lyra took Jake to a private room that was filled with screens and data displays. The walls were white and clean. Nothing was out of place. Everything about the room felt cold and organized. Lyra sat down at a table and gestured for Jake to sit across from her. "Now," Lyra said, "explain these involuntary thoughts." Jake took a deep breath. He had spent the last hour walking behind Lyra and wondering how to explain human biology to an alien. It was not an easy thing to do. How do you explain that your brain is sometimes stupid without sounding like you are making excuses? "Okay," Jake started. "So humans evolved on Earth, which is a very harsh planet. The weather is extreme. There are many predators. We have had to survive in difficult conditions for a very long time. Because of this, our brains developed in certain ways that helped us survive." Lyra leaned forward slightly. "Explain further," she said. "One of the ways we survived was through reproduction," Jake continued. "Humans need to have children to keep our species alive. Our brains are wired to notice potential mates. This is called attraction. It is something that happens automatically. I do not decide to notice someone's body. My brain just does it." "This is inefficient," Lyra said. It was not a question, it was a fact to her. "Maybe," Jake said, "but it worked. It kept humans alive for millions of years. We evolved on a world where we had to reproduce quickly. We had to be able to identify healthy mates. Our brains developed the ability to make these observations very fast. It is not something we can turn off." Lyra stood up and walked to one of the screens on the wall. She pulled up images of human bodies and alien bodies. She looked at the differences carefully. "You say that your species has eliminated the ability to turn off attraction?" Lyra asked. "Not eliminated," Jake said, "but we have not really tried to control it. We just accept it as part of being human. We understand that it is not appropriate to talk about it in formal situations, but the thoughts are still there." Lyra turned back to look at Jake. "And this is what happened today. Your brain noticed my body shape and made an observation about reproductive fitness." Jake felt his face get hot again. "I guess so. I mean, yes. Your body shape is different from human body shapes, but it is still something my brain noticed and categorized as physically attractive." "Interesting," Lyra said. She sat back down. "The evolved past this stage millions of years ago. We moved beyond biological reproduction about 3 million years ago. Our bodies became less important to us. We developed consciousness transfer and genetic engineering. We no longer need to reproduce in the old way." "So you do not have these thoughts anymore?" Jake asked. "No," Lyra said. "We eliminated them. We saw them as inefficient and unnecessary. We focused our efforts on expanding our minds instead of focusing on our bodies. We considered it an evolutionary leap forward." Jake thought about this. "But that means you do not understand why humans still have these thoughts." "Correct," Lyra said. "I do not understand. To me, it seems like a limitation. It seems like something that would make decision-making difficult. It seems like weakness." "Or," Jake said carefully, "it could be seen as a strength." Lyra looked at him with curiosity. "How is involuntary sexual attraction a strength?" Jake stood up and started to pace. He wanted to explain this the right way. He wanted Lyra to understand. "Because," Jake said, "it keeps us connected to something real. When you eliminate all biological drives, you lose something important. You lose the ability to feel urgency. You lose the ability to care about things immediately and deeply. Humans have these biological impulses because they keep us alive. They make us act fast. They make us take risks to protect the people we care about." Lyra was quiet. She was processing what Jake had said. "On Earth," Jake continued, "we have wars and conflicts and struggles, but we also have love and sacrifice and bravery. We have parents who will run into burning buildings to save their children. We have soldiers who will fight to protect their families. We have artists who create beautiful things because they feel something deep inside. None of that would exist if we eliminated our biological drives. None of it would exist if we only thought with logic." "You are saying that biological impulse is necessary for survival," Lyra said. "I am saying that biological impulse is necessary for living," Jake said. Surviving is just existing. Living is feeling. Feeling is what makes us human. Lyra stood up and walked over to a window. Outside, Jake could see cities. They were beautiful but cold. Everything was symmetrical and organized. There was no chaos. There was no mess. There was no life in the way Jake understood life. I have spent my entire existence focused on logic, Lyra said quietly. I have never considered that this might be a limitation instead of an achievement. It is not about being right or wrong, Jake said. Your way is not bad, it is just different from ours. We just see the world through different eyes. You see logic and order. We see chaos and emotion and meaning. Lyra turned back to him. And today, when your translator broadcast your involuntary thought about my body, this was evidence of your species' biological nature. Yes, Jake said. I want to learn more about this, Lyra said. I want to understand how humans think and feel. I want to understand why biological impulse has not destroyed your species. I want to understand what makes humans different from us. Jake felt something shift in the room. He felt like something important had happened. Lyra was not angry. She was not disgusted. She was curious. She wanted to learn. And maybe Jake thought this could be the beginning of something good. I would be happy to teach you, Jake said. Lyra nodded. Then we will continue. We will continue until I understand what it means to be human. And perhaps, the council met in a chamber high above the city. 12 sat around a table made of smooth material that reflected light like water. They did not speak with words. They communicated through something that looked like a collection of lights and sounds that Jake's translator could barely understand. But he could feel the tension in the room. He could feel that not everyone was happy with what had happened. Was the oldest in the room. He had been part of their civilization for over 5,000 years. His skin was darker blue than the other, and his face showed lines that suggested he had seen many things. Did not like humans. He had made this clear from the first moment Jake arrived. You have allowed this human to contaminate your reasoning, said to Lyra. His voice sounded like wind through canyons. The human made a crude observation about your body. You should have removed him from the council immediately. Instead, you invited him to private meetings. This is not logical. Lyra stood up. She was calm, but Jake could see that she was upset. The human made an observation that his species cannot control, Lyra said. This is not an insult. It is evidence of how their biology works. It is information. It is evidence that they are primitive, said. Look at what happened. His machine malfunctioned and broadcast his private thoughts. A sophisticated species would not have private thoughts about body shapes. A sophisticated species would not need to broadcast anything about attraction. Our species eliminated attraction because we eliminated the need for reproduction, Lyra said. The humans still need reproduction, therefore they still have attraction. This is not primitive. This is adaptation to their environment. Stood up, the other turned their attention to him. He was respected. When spoke, the council listened. I have studied Earth, said. It is a harsh world. The humans struggle constantly. They fight among themselves. They destroy their own environment. They make emotional decisions that defy logic. They would be a danger to our civilization if we allowed them access to our technology. They would use it to harm each other and to harm us. Jake sat in the back of the chamber and tried to be invisible. He wanted to say something, but he knew that it would make things worse. He had learned that the best thing to do in arguments was to stay quiet and let them work it out. Another stood up. This one was younger, with bright eyes and less formal clothing than the others. Her name was Sira, and Jake had noticed that she seemed more open-minded than most of the he had met. Sira said, You are afraid. You are afraid because humans are different. You are afraid because they think in ways we do not understand. But fear is not a logical reason to exclude them from our civilization. I am not afraid, said. I am cautious. There is a difference. No, Sira said, there is not. Caution is fear with another name, and fear is preventing us from seeing what these humans might offer us. Sat down, he looked away from Sira. The council was divided, Jake could see that. Some seemed to agree with, some seemed to agree with Sira, and some seemed to be trying to decide what they thought. Lyra stepped forward. I propose a test, she said. If believes that humans are too emotional and illogical to be trusted, then we will give them an impossible task. We will give them a situation where logic and caution will not work. We will give them a situation where they must act with speed and take risks, and we will see what happens. Looked at Lyra with suspicion. What kind of test? Our freighter, the Pride, went silent 3 days ago, Lyra said. It was exploring near the anomaly. We have no idea what happened to it or why it stopped communicating. Our standard response would be to send a survey mission that would carefully approach the location over several weeks. We would gather data and plan our actions based on that data. This is the correct approach, said. But we do not know how much time the crew has, Lyra said. If the ship is damaged, they may have very little air left. They may need help immediately. The humans say that their strength is the ability to make fast decisions and take risks. Let us see if they are right. She pointed to Jake. I propose that the human and a small human team be allowed to investigate the anomaly immediately, using their methods. If they find the crew alive, then we will know that their approach has value. If they fail, then we will know that you are right. We will bar them from space forever. The council chamber was silent. Everyone was thinking about what Lyra had said. This was not just a test of the humans. This was a test of whether logic was complete. This was a test of whether there were other ways to solve problems. Finally spoke, I agree to this test, but I warn you, Lyra, when the humans fail, do not ask me to feel sympathy for them. They will have had their chance. The vote was called. Most of the council agreed. Humans would be given a chance to prove themselves. Jake would lead the mission. If he succeeded, humanity would be welcome in space. If he failed, humans would be locked out forever. Lyra walked over to Jake as the council was ending. You understand what this means? She asked. Jake assembled his team in the docking bay of the human research vessel. He had one day to put together the best team he could find and to prepare them for a mission that might be impossible. He had chosen 5 people, and he believed they were the best humans for the job. Was the pilot. She had flown more dangerous missions than anyone Jake knew. She could fly a ship through an asteroid field or through a storm without breaking a sweat. She was calm under pressure, and she never panicked. She was the person Jake wanted in the cockpit when things went bad. Was the engineer. He could look at broken technology and understand how to fix it with whatever materials he had available. He could build things from nothing. He could improvise. He could solve problems that seemed impossible. Park was the scientist. She could think through complex situations and find patterns that others missed. She could predict what would happen next based on what was happening now. She could understand systems and how they worked together. Stephen Hayes was the medic. He could keep people alive under the worst circumstances. He could make decisions about who needed help first and what treatments would work best. He could work fast and stay focused even when everything was falling apart around him. Sandra West was the security officer. She could protect the team when things got dangerous. She could make split-second decisions about threats. She could lead people and keep them calm when fear was trying to take over. Jake stood in front of them and told them what they had to do. He told them about the Pride. He told them about the anomaly. He told them that they had given them one chance to prove that humans could do things that logic and caution could not do. We have no idea what we are going to find when we get there, Jake said. We might find a dead ship. We might find nothing at all, but we are going to try. And we are going to use the one thing that do not understand. We are going to use our gut. We are going to use our instincts. We are going to move fast and think on our feet. The team looked at each other. They were nervous, but they were ready. They boarded the ship and took them into space. The journey to the anomaly took 6 hours. Spent that time analyzing what they knew about the anomaly. She pulled up every piece of data that they had collected. She studied the patterns. She tried to understand what the anomaly was and how it behaved. It is not stable, said as they got closer. The readings show it is expanding and contracting. It is almost like it is breathing. Breathing, Jake asked. Anomalies do not breathe. This one does, said. Look at the pattern. It expands for about 30 minutes. Then it contracts for about 30 minutes. It has been doing this for 3 days, ever since the Pride disappeared. Adjusted their course. If it is breathing, then we need to time our approach. We go in when it is contracting. We move fast. We get in and get out before it expands again. How do you know that? Asked. I do not know, said, but my gut says that is what we need to do. This was human thinking. This was what they did not understand. A pilot would have spent weeks calculating the exact moment to enter based on mathematical models. Knew it in her bones because her species had been making decisions based on instinct for millions of years. They got closer to the anomaly. It looked like a tear in space itself. Colors that Jake had no names for swirled inside it. The edges of the tier were moving, expanding, and contracting just like said they would. There, Sandra said, pointing at the sensors. I see something inside. It looks like a ship. It was the Pride, but it was not alone. It was stuck inside the tier in space, held by forces that Jake did not understand, and the tier was starting to collapse. How long do we have? Jake asked. Looked at her instruments. At the current rate of collapse, maybe 2 hours, maybe less. Then we go now, said. She pushed the ship toward the anomaly. Jake felt his stomach drop as they entered the tier. The ship shook. The walls rattled. Equipment fell from the shelves, but kept the ship steady. Her hands moved over the controls with perfect precision. This was what she had trained for. This was what her instincts had prepared her for. They moved alongside the ship, was already in the cargo bay, getting ready to create a connection between the two vessels. He had a plan. It was crazy and probably would not work, but it was the only plan they had. I am going to attach a power cable, said through the communication system. I am going to transfer all of our energy to their ship. I am going to overload our reactors and use that power to break their ship free from the anomaly. That will destroy our ship, Steven said. Yes, said, but it will save their crew, and that is what we came here to do. Jake wanted to tell to stop. He wanted to come up with a better plan, but there was no time. There was no better plan. There was only this. There was only willing to sacrifice his own ship to save people he had never met. The power transfer began. Jake felt the ship shudder as their reactors were pushed beyond their limits. Energy flowed from their vessel into the ship. The cables glowed with heat. Come on, whispered, watching the sensors. Come on. The ship moved. It was small at first, just a tremor. But then it moved more. The anomaly was releasing it. The ship was breaking free. Now, Jake said, get us out of here. Push the throttle forward. The human ship pulled away from the anomaly, towing the vessel behind it. The tier in space was collapsing. It was collapsing fast. The edges were moving together. 30 seconds, said. 20 seconds, she said a moment later. Come on, said to the ship as if it could hear her. Come on, baby. 10 seconds. They burst out of the anomaly as it collapsed completely. Behind them, the tier sealed itself shut. The Pride was behind them, safe and intact. But the human ship was damaged. Its reactors were burned out. Its engines were failing. They were alive, but they were crippled. Damage report, Jake said. We are not going back to the station under our own power, said. The ship is not flying again without a complete rebuild. But the crew, Jake asked. The crew is alive, Steven said. I am reading life signs from the vessel. They are in hibernation, but they are alive. Jake breathed out. They had done it. They had saved them. They had used speed and instinct and willingness to risk everything, and it had worked. Sent a distress signal to the council. She told them what had happened. She told them that the Pride was safe. She told them that the crew was alive. Then they waited for rescue. They waited to see what they would say. They waited to see if this crazy, the rescue ship arrived within 4 hours. It picked up the damaged human vessel and the Pride and brought them both to the station. Jake and his team were taken to medical for examination, even though none of them were seriously injured. They wanted to make sure that the rescue operation had not damaged them in any way. When Jake was finally allowed to leave medical, he was taken directly to a meeting with the council. He did not know what to expect. He did not know if they would praise his team or condemn them for destroying a human ship in the process of saving a one. Jake entered the council chamber and found that Lyra was waiting for him. She was standing near the observation window that looked out over the city. The other council members were there too, but it was Lyra who turned to greet him. Your mission was successful, Lyra said. It was a statement of fact. Yes, Jake said. We found the ship. We freed it from the anomaly. The crew is safe. I have been watching the recordings of your mission, Lyra said. I have observed every decision you made. I have observed every action your team took. I want to ask you something. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Yes. Why did you not wait for more information? Lyra asked. Why did you not spend time planning? Why did you move so quickly into danger? Jake thought about the question. He could have given a complicated answer. He could have talked about biology and evolution and human history. But he did not. He gave a simple answer. Because people needed help, Jake said. Because there was not time to plan. Because when someone is dying, you do not think about whether the plan is perfect. You think about how to save them. You move fast. You use everything you have. You do not wait. Lyra nodded slowly. She turned back to the window. When I was watching the recordings, there was one moment that stayed with me. Your engineer was disconnecting himself from the power transfer system. He knew it would destroy your ship. He knew his sacrifice might not be enough, but he did it anyway. He did it without hesitation. That is what he does, Jake said. That is who he is. He saves people. He had never met the crew, Lyra said. He had no personal relationship with them. He had nothing to gain from their rescue, yet he risked everything for them. Why? Jake stepped forward. Because it was right, because they needed help, because that is what humans do for each other. We help people, we save people, not because we calculate that it will benefit us, but because it is the right thing to do. Stood up from his seat. Jake felt fear wash over him. This was it. This was the moment would condemn the mission and the humans. But did not condemn them. Instead, he walked forward and stood facing Jake. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Jake had never seen a do before. He bowed. I was wrong, said. I did not understand your species. I thought that emotion and impulse were weaknesses. But I have seen what they can do. I have seen what they can accomplish. I have seen humans achieve things that logic could not achieve. Jake did not know what to say. He had not expected this. Continued. Your species did not hesitate. Your species did not wait for the perfect plan. Your species moved forward with incomplete information and succeeded because you dared. You felt urgency. You felt the need to help. These feelings saved lives. These feelings did something that 3,000 years of logic could not do. The other council members stood up. One by one, they moved forward. They did not bow but they showed respect in other ways. They acknowledged that something important had happened. They acknowledged that they had been wrong about humans. Finally, only Syrah remained seated. She was smiling. I knew they could do it, she said. I knew that emotion was not weakness. Lyra turned to Jake. The Council would like to make a formal invitation to humanity. We would like to invite Earth to join the Galactic Council. We would like to form an alliance with your species. We would like to learn from your ways while we teach you from ours. Jake felt something warm move through his chest. This was what they had come for. This was what the mission was supposed to accomplish. Earth was about to become part of something bigger. Earth was about to join the greater galactic community. On behalf of Earth, I accept, Jake said, and I thank you for giving us this chance. That night, there was a formal diplomatic dinner. All the council members attended. The crew of the Pride was there too, freshly awakened from their hibernation. They wanted to meet the humans who had saved their lives. Jake sat at the head table next to Lyra. She seemed different now. She seemed more open. She seemed more alive in a way that Jake had not seen before. I have been thinking about what you said, Lyra told him. About biological impulse and feeling. I think I want to understand this better. I think my species has been missing something important. It is not something you can learn in a day, Jake said. It will take time. Then we will take time, Lyra said. I want to understand how your brain works. I want to understand why you can feel so much and still make good decisions. I want to understand what drives humans to sacrifice for others. As they ate, Jake thought about how strange life was. 3 days ago, his biggest worry had been giving a good presentation to the... 3 days ago, his biggest embarrassment was telling an alien that she had a nice posterior. Now everything had changed. Humans were part of the galactic community. His team was being celebrated as heroes, and all of it had started because his translator had malfunctioned and broadcast his involuntary thought. Lyra reached over and put her hand on his arm. It was a very human gesture. Jake had not thought did things like that. Thank you, she said, for being yourself, for not hiding what you are, for showing us that different does not mean lesser, for teaching us that feeling can be a strength. Jake looked at her. Her blue skin reflected the light from the city below. Her eyes were bright and alive. Thank you for being willing to learn, Jake said, for being curious instead of afraid, for giving us a chance when you could have thrown us away. Around them, humans ate together and talked together. It was the beginning of something new. It was the beginning of a partnership between two worlds, and it had all started with a thought that could not be kept private. Sometimes the universe works in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best futures, and sometimes admitting what you are thinking, even when it is embarrassing, is exactly what needs to happen to change everything. As Jake looked out at the city below and at the aliens around him and at the humans sitting at the table, he smiled. Whatever happened next, he knew that this moment would be remembered. This moment when two species finally understood that their differences made them stronger, not weaker. This moment when a human accidentally told an alien that she was beautiful, and it changed the world. As they floated in space with a dead ship and a successful rescue, Jake felt something shift. This was what it meant to be human. This was what they did not understand. When it mattered, when lives were on the line, humans could do extraordinary things. They could sacrifice. They could act fast. They could be heroes. "I understand," Jake said. "I have to save the crew to prove that humans are worth something." "More than that," Lyra said. "You have to show them that emotion and quick thinking can work together with logic. You have to show them that biological impulse can lead to heroic actions. You have to show them that humans are not broken. You have to show them that we are different and that different can be good." Jake nodded. He felt the weight of what was being asked of him. All of humanity was depending on what he did next. The whole future of human-alien relations was riding on whether he could find a ship in space. He had never been more scared in his life, and he had never been more ready to fight. He said, "Your species will teach us something valuable about being alive." Jake smiled. Maybe this disaster was going to turn into something better after all. Maybe they needed to understand that humans were not broken or inferior. Maybe they needed to understand that different could be good. And maybe, just maybe, Jake's embarrassing moment of involuntary thought was going to change everything. Jake nodded quickly. He could work with that. Maybe this was not going to be a total disaster. Maybe the meeting could still go well. Maybe he was not going to start a war with an alien species just because his brain could not stop being weird. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Jake tried to focus on the trade agreements. He tried to forget about what had happened, but he could not. The whole time Lyra was talking, Jake was aware of her presence. He was aware that she knew what he had thought about her body. He was aware that she had asked him to explain it later. When the meeting finally ended, Lyra told him to follow her. Jake followed her down a long hallway in the council building. His heart was beating fast. He did not know what was going to happen next. All he knew was that his life had changed in the last few hours. And it had all started because his translator had decided to tell an alien woman that she had a really nice butt.